Hello, and welcome to Required Reading, the podcast that revisits the most impactful books from our childhood. I'm your host, Erin Bowles. I'm a writer, actor, and comedian. You can see me on shows like Welcome to Flatch, Gaslit, and Mythic Quest. And our guest today is Phillip Iscove. Phillip is a writer, producer who created the Fox TV series Sleepy Hollow. He's also wrote on the Grey's Anatomy spin-off Station 19 and developed pilots for CBS, NBC, and HBO Max. But perhaps most importantly, he's the co-host of podcast Like It's the 2000s. Hello!
Hello. Thank you for having me here.
Oh my goodness. We followed each other for so long, and
We did.
finally,
Yes. It all happened finally.
our book today from 1979, written by James and Deborah Howe, Bunnicula.
Indeed. A rabbit tail of mystery.
A Rabbit Tale of Mystery. This book is about a vampire bunny.
Pretty
Maybe.
much, yeah. Maybe. Yeah.
I was surprised when you picked this because I had read it. I read it in fourth grade, checked it out from the library, retained almost nothing. But what's your story with this book? How did it come into your life?
Well, it's funny. So when you reached out and I looked at the list of available books, I started to try to think like what activated me as a writer, which seems to be the premise of this podcast. And I wouldn't say that I was like a late reader per se, but like I didn't read a ton when I was super young, in the time when you are quote unquote activated. I feel like a lot of people I know and friends of mine, it was like a real escape for them as kids, right? Either they had siblings or they didn't or whatever. And it was just like, I can just sit in a corner and read a book. And Lord knows, I wish more kids did that today. But I didn't really have that until relatively later. I was probably in my I was probably like 11, 12, 13 when I really started reading. And this book was a book that predates that. I remember it. I want to say that it might have been a book that our teacher recommended to the class to read or something along those lines. I mean, so I'm born in 80. So I figure I'm probably talking about grade, I don't know, it's probably like 7, 8, 9, something in that vicinity. And I do remember reading it or having it read to me. And my mom, when I told her I was coming on this podcast, I was like, what did I read? And she was like, you liked Bunnicula. And I was like, okay. So that just was like, okay, fine, so I'll do. And then even before reading it, I was like, well, that does make sense in the sense that it's a very kind of, it's not a stretch to draw a line between Bunnicula and Sleepy Hollow, for lack of a better way of putting it. It's very meta. Obviously, it's very self-aware of what it's doing. It's playing inside a genre and making it accessible to kids. And also sort of teaching you the rules of vampires a little bit. I think that as a kid, I probably just was like drawn to its silliness, but also sort of its sweetness. And it's not spooky, but like it's got a little bit of a spookiness to it. So I think that was sort of the stuff that probably spoke to me as a kid. But rereading it, obviously, it was... I didn't remember a lot of it.
No,
I mean, I remember the general premise, but like outside of that, that's
Yeah, I did not remember that it's narrated by the family dog, Harold.
Yeah, I didn't remember that either.
Yeah, all I remembered was there's a bunny who's a vampire, and that was it. The narrative starts, well, first there's this fantastic editor's note that I completely forgot about, where it starts editor's note, and it basically says, this is a true story. It is from Harold the dog. Like you were saying, the meta elements, I think that it makes you feel like you stumbled upon something secret. I think that's such a great way to pull
sets
a
the
kid
tone,
in.
obviously, as well, of how aware that Harold is telling us a story and is a part of the story. I mean, it's a kid's book, so like you can't drill too deep into it. Plus, I do think they're yada-yadaing a lot of stuff because they just don't want to, and understandably don't want to kind of bog it down. The whole thing is under 100 pages. You know what I mean? They clearly want to sort of, I mean, I don't even know where this fits in the kind of canon of kids literature. And by that, I mean, like, it's not a novella, but it's also not like I don't know. It sort of feels like it's almost like in a purgatorial space in terms of like length and detail
Yeah.
and grammar. Like some of the word choices and the vocabulary in it is a little like high-minded to a
Hmm.
certain degree. Like I imagine that there's a bunch of words in there that the kids are asking their parents what they mean,
Yeah.
which is fine. But I'm just like it's just it lives in a weird space, which I think is perhaps part of why it hit a vein. No pun intended.
Yeah. That was a good pun, though. You should have intended
Yeah, I
that.
should have just wrapped my arms around it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
You said this earlier that it sort of obviously functions as like an introduction to vampire mythology, which is always a thing that is around. But I think it's also nice because there's the almost like Amelia Bedelia elements of it, where there's like we have to put a stake to the heart, so they grab a big piece of meat, and there's lots of garlic. They said like there was one that was like everybody knows if you douse a vampire in water, and I was like, this
yeah.
is new to me,
That's new
but
to me. Yeah, yeah.
nevertheless, it is silly in odd ways. It, like you said, it's a kid's book, so it feels wrong to really pick it apart and be like, the narrative structure doesn't work for me. But there is this repeated refrain. It's even like the last line in the book. This dog loves chocolate. What are we doing here?
Yeah, I mean that's a bad. I mean, as anyone who knows who's had a dog, it's very bad for dogs. Dogs should not be eating chocolate.
Perhaps
Yeah,
the worst. Yeah.
it's. I mean, maybe they just didn't know that in '79. I guess it's hard to say. Plus, also just like don't give your dog cupcakes on top of it. I mean, like it's all bad for the dog. But
Yeah.
yeah, it is very sort of. I mean, it's obviously very playful. It's got its heart in the right place as well, in the sense that it's it's a very sort of lovely book about a family that loves their pets and doesn't really understand what's going on with them because obviously they can't communicate with the humans. But it does feel very sort of timeless in a way. Like it doesn't, you know what I mean? It doesn't feel as though it exists in the 70s to me. Outside of, as we said, the knowledge of chocolate for dogs, perhaps they didn't know that in the 70s, but like you don't feel yeah, it just doesn't have sort of that, like, it doesn't feel dated. It really does kind of just exist in its own sort of vacuum of domesticity, you know?
Yeah. The selection of vampires is a timeless thing, but it also is very separate. Like I liked how you said it's a thing of domesticity. We don't have any real markers of time. Maybe the language is I don't know. Is That's where the
A little
language is
heightened
coming
at times.
from?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I read a month or two ago we did The Mouse and the Motorcycle, which is from
Great.
50s or 60s, and that every once in a while they were saying, gee golly whiz, and that was like, oh, maybe this is a little older. But I think you're absolutely right. I mean, we're almost 20 years apart, and you read it, and I read it, and I'm sure kids are still reading it. And I think something that often succeeds with kids' books is when you have an introduction to something bigger, horror or something that meets you where you are and treats you with a little bit of ability too. Because by the end, the stakes are quite high. The cat Chester is starving little Bunnicula on the thesis.
It's kind of fucked up.
It really is. We get to a point where Harold the dog is like, this bunny is gonna die.
Yes.
Quite shocking.
Quite shocking. I mean, and you get the vet component, brought into all of this. So there's kind of the medical component too. Yeah, I mean, it does feel like, speaking to sort of where it fits in the whole like canon of kids books, I think it also feels substantive enough and long enough that if you are sort of in those early reading years, feels like a book, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like a picture book. It doesn't feel like, Goodnight Moon or something to that effect, which you've been reading, I assume, as a kid. Before that, it feels like a stepping stone towards real quote unquote books. So in that respect too, I think it's got that kind of training wheels vibe to it, but the stakes do get there by the end. Again, not to be, it's
Not to
a
ask
little
too
repetitive.
much of it.
You know what I mean? Like at a certain point, its premise is relatively thin.
Very.
So really, it's just like Chester's figured out that Bunnicula is a cat, is a vampire. And we sort of tread water for a while until we get to a place where a climax can, happen. It's a lot of Chester acting like a lunatic and the family not really understanding what's going on. And Harold understands, but is also like, dude, what's your deal? This book does seem very pro cat and anti dog, I would say.
Say more about that, please.
Well, they
I
make
did not
Harold
get
seem
that.
really dumb.
Well, that's true. That is
They're kind of like
correct.
dogs are dumb, cats are smart.
Although
But
I
also
will
cats are
say,
mean and assholes.
yes.
So like it's a little bit of,
And Harold can fully, they both can fully read. And
yes, absolutely.
at the beginning in the Harold Defense Squad,
Mm,
they discover Bunnicula at a movie theater at a screening of some kind of vampire movie. And he
yes.
has a note
I think it's
titled,
Dracula.
yes, I think so.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
so. And I was kind of expecting it to follow the like story
I do
beats of
too.
Dracula more
Yeah.
specifically, but there's a little bit of story about how it's written that I'll
Hmm.
remember to get to. But Harold recognizes the rare Russian dialect that is on the
Hmm.
note on
Hmm.
Bunnicula's neck from the Carpathian Mountains. And that was one of the things I was like, hold on, what are we doing here? And then you have to
Yeah.
sit back and go, you know what, why not? Let's just have some fun.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that Harold's stupid per se. He has like a lane of knowledge that one might
Mm,
argue is exceedingly heightened for a dog.
the dog.
But then he also like doesn't understand words, right? So like there's
Yeah.
just kind of this ping-ponginess to it. I mean, Chester seems far more well-read, I guess,
Literally very well read.
in comparison to Harold. But I do think that like it plays into, I mean, I don't want to say stereotypes, but tropes of what we think about cats and dogs, right? Which is that
100%.
like dogs are loyal and sweet and they're big kind of dummies that love you to death, and cats are mean and independent and sort of up to no good, I guess. I mean,
Yeah.
you could draw those conclusions, I guess. Very little to say about rabbits, however, in terms
Yes.
of yeah. Not a
But
lot of
Nicola
like
is barely on the page, which was, I think, kind
a
of
choice.
upsetting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's ultimately a quote unquote vampire. He is sucking the color out of vegetables
Juice. Yeah.
and leaving them, yes, juice.
Yeah.
The most substance to me comes pretty quickly at the end when the stakes are really heightened. And
Hmm.
Harold says something like, Chester is being mean to Bunnicula just because he eats in a different way than we
Hmm.
do. And then I
Hmm.
was like, okay, here's the moral of the story. Let's
Yeah.
be tolerant. But I think there was also an interesting element of like, Chester is our friend. He is on our side.
Hmm.
And yet he's doing really messed up things. And so sometimes our friends
Yeah.
can be wrong. You can do harm in the pursuit of good. So I think that was all very,
Hmm.
meaty and good, but it did feel a little shoehorned. It did feel like we got to the end and we're
Sure.
like, oh, we should say something here.
Yeah. I mean, in a way, it seems like it's a very pro-vegetarian
Yeah.
message,
Well,
um,
yes.
which is that we should love vegetarians as much as we love meat eaters. It's interesting, like you mentioning the thinness of the Bunnicula character, and I mean, I guess to me it feels like they, and by they I mean Deborah and James, the authors, probably felt that Bunnicula speaking in any capacity was going to make the mystery components of
Yeah.
it harder to land, right? Which is that if he's able to in any way confirm, deny, what have you, any information, then it takes the piss out of what the mystery is, which I get. But there is an argument for him, if it's a him, for Bunnicula. Um, if he spoke Romanian or whatever,
Yeah.
right? And then you have like a component of whatever. Like there's ways of sort of making it a richer character. I don't even really think that the character needs to even communicate per se through words to be more substantial in the narrative. Because to your point, it's a cipher,
Mhm.
and that makes it, I guess, compelling or mysterious, but also he could have talked at the end. You know what I mean? Like by the end,
Yeah.
you kind of want some sort of a punctuation on the character a little
Exactly.
bit that gives you a sense of that he's one of the family now. And I know that like he's cuddling with Harold at the end, and they're friends, and that's nice. but they could have gone farther with it.
Yes. There's a moment where Harold has saved Bunnicula and everything's okay. Maybe it's when they're at the vet. And Bunnicula turns and gives Harold this huge grin. And
Yeah.
to me, that was bone chilling. I was like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
is there a new story here? Is Bunnicula
Yeah.
evil?
Yeah.
And they're just friends. And Harold at one point very quickly, I got whiplash from it. At one point, Harold is just like, Bunnicula is my friend, and that's
But
that.
I think it's that he, I mean, he feels bad
Yeah.
that Chester's starving this animal. It's a bit of a hard turn. I
Yeah.
agree with you. It's kind of like, we need him to do this,
Yes.
so he's going to do this. Yeah, yeah.
Although I was, thinking about it this morning, and I was like, I guess I don't really know if kids are still like that when you're, in this reading group. The kids are certainly like that of meet on the playground and this is now my best friend. So
Yes.
I'm okay with it, I can find a way to justify it, I guess, to myself.
No, totally, totally. Reading it, I was sort of, I mean, it's very charming. I was charmed by the relationship between Harold and Chester, this sort of detente that has happened between cats and dogs, and they found a way to live together. And I also appreciated the relationship with Toby,
Yeah, one of the kids.
one of the kids. I don't know if he's the older or the younger. I think he's the younger, or maybe I don't know.
I wouldn't know.
Yeah, you wouldn't know.
I wouldn't know.
But Harold and Toby, the little boy, having sort of this Friday nights where Toby gets to stay up later and he gets to eat, various snacks and stuff in bed or whatever, and Harold is in there while he's reading Treasure Island. Like again, sort of underlining the domestic sort of. It's pretty blissful, right?
Yeah.
Like it seems like this family has it all figured out.
Yes.
Which is nice, even
There's
if it might
even-
not be believable.
Yeah, there's a line at the beginning when we're meeting the whole family that's something like, everyone in this house treats each other with respect, and they explain things to me, the dog. And
Yeah.
I was like, oh, beautiful. And I think it's nice to every once in a while, like, lay out a bit of, like, not to get too high-handed with it, lay out a bit of emotional intelligence to be like, your parents should respect you, and then move on.
Yeah.
Nice.
There's obviously like conflicts to some degree, like the siblings have their rivalries, and the parents aren't always on the same page, and there's a little bit of chaos in the household, which is necessary. But yeah, I did find myself kind of reading it and thinking like, children's literature is a tough thing to navigate, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, unfortunately, now more than ever, due to circumstances we don't need to get into, in terms of what kids are and aren't allowed to read, and parents being weaponized by the government and things like that. But I do think that when you're writing books for kids, you want to sort of open their eyes to stuff, and show that family life can be bumpy, and like that's okay, and dealing with the anxieties that come with being a child and whatnot. And I think this book, for the most part, I mean, it doesn't obviously go particularly deep into the family dynamics, but I do think that it allows for there to be friction without it feeling anxiety inducing.
Yeah.
And allows there to sort of be that, like, it's not always wine and roses, but like, we're family and all that sort of stuff.
Absolutely. And I think the narrative gives a good kind of frame of reference for perhaps the very relatable thing of like, there's a new baby in the house and it's replacing me. I think things like that are always very helpful and instructive, even if the kid reading it doesn't make that connection.
Totally. Yeah.
I think it might even be good for parents to be like, do you remember when Chester was a little upset? I liked what you said about being pro-vegetarianism, because there's a line where they're talking about, why are these vegetables turning white? And Toby maybe goes, it's DDT.
That's a little bit of the 70s right there.
I think that might be the only one. Although, like, I remember so clearly in like 2008 having a science teacher who was just very like, GMOs are terrible, and would like derail class for that. But I think that was her, and maybe not a thing of the times.
It is. I'm trying to think. I mean, I do have like vague, as I'm sure you do to some degree, but like vague recollections of, talk of pesticides and talk of these things. And obviously now we have organic fruit that, and vegetables and whatnot that hopefully are not involved in any sort of chemicals and whatnot. But it does seem to be kind of a pro-vegetarian
Yeah.
book for what it's
Yeah.
worth. I have not read any of the other Bunniculas, so I can't
No.
speak to those.
I don't know how much you know
I'm
about
just
the
looking it up.
authors, the
Hmm.
Hows. Was there an introduction in your copy? Because there was in mine.
I got this one.
I think that's the cover I had when I was young. I read the e-book.
Holiday Inn is
Yes.
82, Celery Stalks at Midnight's 83, Nighty Nightmare 87,
Hmm.
Return to Holiday Inn
Yeah.
92, Bunnicula Strikes Again 99, and then Bunnicula meets Edgar Allan Poe in '06. That seems like the biggest stretch of the bunch, I would say.
Yeah.
That's
And
the one where I'm
yet,
like, we're introducing real life authors from the
uh,
past.
but I love it. And but now like I didn't love this book, but I am now like, well, I need to learn about Holiday Inn.
I'm a little bit like curious
Yeah.
as to how they milk this
Hmm.
future installments
For
because
like
they're
7 books. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, because my only assumption, and again, I don't know, and we could find out if we wanted to, um, that Bunnicula not being in the title of these books until the last two
Hmm.
makes me wonder whether or not we're just on sort of like spooky mysteries with
Yeah.
Chester and Harold and the family, and like Bunnicula is, a silent, because like it does feel to me like, yeah, this is, yeah. So I'm just looking at the
Hmm.
Holiday Inn. Harold the dog, Chester the cat are left at a kennel called Chateau Bow Wow, where the Monroe family is on vacation. They encounter strange howls, disappearing animals, rumors of murder, leading Chester to suspect werewolves and a sinister plot at the Holiday Inn. So smartly, one
Hmm.
might say, they've decided to remove the Bunnicula
Yeah.
character.
And when you do vampires, logically the next step is always werewolves.
Werewolves, and I don't know what the now I'm going to look up
Yeah.
Celery Stalks at Midnight because why not? Zombies. Yeah. So yeah,
The classic third.
the
Yeah.
classic third. So it makes sense. Yeah, I mean, okay, I'm looking up Bunnicula meets Edgar Allan Poe just
Go
because
for it.
I'm curious as to how
Mine,
this is possible.
Wikipedia says Edgar Allan Crow.
Oh, my apologies. It is out Edgar Allan Crow. You're right.
Still fascinating.
Yeah, Gothic author M.T. Graves and his pet crow Edgar Allan Crow, who are visiting, seem to have sinister plans for Bunnicula, leading to humorous misunderstandings and a mystery for Chester the cat, Harold the dog, and Howie the puppy. So we've got a puppy in
How
the
did
mix
that
now.
happen?
That's
They
exciting.
probably
That's
just
exciting.
adopted it. I'm like,
Yeah, they're
Harold
just
gets
like
a
whatever.
girlfriend. They probably just
Yeah,
adopted
who
it.
the hell knows? But Edgar Allan Crow, cute. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, I guess these are all. I mean, James. Yeah, they're all written by the same
Yeah.
author, so that's nice.
Yeah. So I'll go into a little bit
Yeah,
about the
please,
house.
please, yes, yes,
So
yes.
the reason why I'm gonna get a little sad here, the reason why
Oh
Deborah
no.
Howe is not in the rest of them is because she dies before the first one comes out.
Oh, she died before the first Bunnicula comes out.
Yeah. So she and James Howe has a very lovely website and he has a whole page about writing Bunnicula that is very sweet. But he and Deborah are like struggling actors who met in college and fell in love. And one night they come up with the idea of Bunnicula and they just start writing for fun. And then the idea kind of fades away. I think his mother-in-law is like, "Oh, you should write a book. That'd be fun." And then Deborah gets cancer. And she's like 33. It's very
Right.
sad.
That's very
And
sad.
so they start writing it again while she's in the hospital. And it is sort of the way that James kind of keeps afloat emotionally. So then he ultimately gets married again and then has kids and then married a third time. But it seems all around a
Okay.
lovely guy. Well, here's the interesting part. So he marries another woman. They have two
Mhm.
kids. And then he marries a man and he's like, "I'm gay."
Love
Which
that for him. I
love that
mean,
for
that's great.
him.
Yeah.
But everything he writes about Deborah is so, so sweet. They were both writers as kids, but he always wanted to be an actor. They talk about, or he talks about the importance of words. There's a very lovely introduction to mine, I think, for like the 40th anniversary, maybe, of the book, But I do wonder if there's a little bit of, keeping Deborah alive with the rest of the books that is very sweet.
That's interesting. I mean, that's first. That's lovely. Sad, obviously tragic that Deborah passed so young. I just also wonder, like, it must have been a hit. I not to be
Yes.
crass, but there is kind of this like this book clearly sparked something for people,
Yes.
and yeah, I mean, why wouldn't you write more of them,
Yeah.
right? It's especially if you found sort of a conceit that works, and he clearly did, of playing in the different genres of horror and the supernatural. I mean, I would do it too. I mean, I'm sure it's very lucrative for him.
Yeah.
It is so much so that you actually I was sort of surprised that we hadn't seen any adaptations of it. My assumption being that he just want to, and that's totally fair. But you could absolutely see an animated series of these, even if especially today, right? Like there's a Disney Plus series for sure, where you play with these characters and do it as an animated series. I mean, you totally could do it.
So
but
cute.
my assumption is that he's just like, no.
Yeah.
That's what I'm assuming anyway.
Exactly. And you could have like Bunnicula as a silent character just hanging out, Snoopy. Yeah.
Sure. Absolutely.
I think that the story of the publication is that James Howe was an out of work actor, so he was an assistant at a lit agency. And I, as a reader, was like, you're saying that like it's a bad thing. That sounds like a plum job to me.
That's great, yeah.
But whatever. Different world.
Yeah.
And I think he either like brings it to his boss or another literary agent. There's some lit agent that sits down, reads it in one sitting, and says, I love it, I want it, we're gonna do it. And I don't know. I think that, like, it's always frustrating to hear stories of that where, like, a win sounds so easy. And yet I'm also like, this guy had a hard life at this point. It's nice to have a win. Yeah.
No, I mean, it seems like he went through it. He found his ways through some trying times. It's nice to see that he's, even if it's late in life, that he's found a path for himself that he's happy with. It does seem like the type of thing that you have to wonder in like the late 70s, if you're at a literary agency, if you're an agent at a literary agency and your assistant brings you this book, do you stick your neck out for it? Like, obviously they did, but it is just sort of fascinating to think like there couldn't have been much like this at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not much like it today.
Yeah, I thought a lot about Goosebumps in this, which anytime I don't have an episode scheduled, I try to read a Goosebumps book just to keep the consistency. I think it felt very similar in it's this approachability, but I think Goosebumps started in the 90s, so
yes,
certainly a different era.
Is your Bunnicula?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But having that introduction, I kept reading it and just sitting like thinking, oh, this must have been really fun to work on together. And that's an adult reading it, but I think like there's just a loveliness about it and sort of like what a great exercise to just like instead of talking about your day, just sit down and say I think they said something like, what's the silliest, least scary vampire you can think of, and in that they have a little illustration that I think
the illustrations, by the way, are wonderful in the book.
Yes, and James, when the agent bought it, they said, what do you want to do about illustrations? And he said, can we copy Charlotte's Web? I want to do those kinds of illustrations.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
they're I'm trying to think of like the best way to describe it. They almost look like they were drawn like by dots.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like it has kind of this
oh gosh, I can't think of the name either.
Quality to it that's really nice and very sort of in a way gothic, right? Like it has sort of this, like you look at some of these photos and it does have this, like you could see it being in some sort of gothic book or something to that effect. Like it is just interesting. They threaded a bunch of needles to make it work because you could see the bad version of it, It is nice to see that it aged surprisingly well.
I think, like you said, it's about the timelessness, which I think is a great lesson for
Yeah.
a writer to always be reminded of. I like the illustrations because they're, to me at least, it was a little hard to piece out what they
Yeah.
were. And I think that is a good thing to
Hmm.
engage closer,
Yeah.
looking.
Pointillism, I think, was the word that we were
Pointillism!
looking for. There it
Yeah!
is. There it is.
That's
We did
it.
it. Okay,
That's
sorry.
it. There you
Yep.
go.
Yep.
But yeah, I think it works so well. I love that it's, pulling something from his childhood. And I think,
Totally.
again, a thing that makes it feel distinct. Yeah.
Each character is sharply drawn as well in a way that is surprising, I guess, on some level, right? Like I mean, I have not read a ton of children's literature, but it does feel like you can paint with pretty broad brushes if you're not careful. And I think that, the parents feel different. Toby feels different. Obviously, Chester and Harold feel like they have their own perspectives. So it all kind of feels very, just sharp.
Yeah. It absolutely makes sense that it continues and continues to be
Yes,
successful.
totally.
Yeah, I think it's a solid little one. It's not reinventing the wheel, but like, yeah, go for it. Why
No,
not?
totally. It's.
Yeah.
I would also say too that as someone who would go on to write, it does feel like the type of thing that for a kid to read something like this and think, oh, you can do that, right?
Yes.
That you turn things on their heads and that you can crawl inside a genre and kind of make it your own and play with. Like I think it's the play component of it, because I think that as kids, when you're a young kid, there's like it's boundless. There are no rules, right? That's why like so much children's television, I guess, to some degree, is sort of without rules, right? Like
Yeah.
it can be very surreal. I mean, I think about like there's a lot of stuff that kids watch where you're just like, this is the Teletubbies, for instance.
Yes.
I mean, or just whatever the case might be.
I was talking
things.
about Teletubbies this morning. Wow.
Well, there you go. It's such a bizarre thing, and I think it's why adults are drawn to children's stuff, because it does give you that opportunity to be sort of surreal and to be able to kind of teach kids things through these kind of wackadoo lenses, right?
Yeah.
And I think that as you get older, you start to feel like the rules start coming for you, and and I think that to be able to read something like this and be like, oh, you can still have fun. You can still, it doesn't need to adhere to everything.
Yeah, I think it's always it's a great opportunity when a book is the first time a kid goes, "Oh, I didn't know books could be like this."
Yeah.
And it's a great thing as an adult to come back and be like, "Yeah, why not?" And let me take a stab at it. And I was thinking, oh, maybe I would have, if I were writing it, I would have had it go in a different direction. And then I was like, do it then. I did not write it, but you know what? It's an exercise. I think definitely has some good merits.
It's the choose your own adventure
Yes.
component a little bit too. I
Precisely.
think that I remember reading those as a kid. I'll say that as much as I enjoyed them, I did find them there's an unsatisfying component to the fact that that there's like all these different endings, right? So you're just sort of like, you didn't commit, right? Like you didn't actually I'm the one choosing the stories, which is cool, I guess, and it is fun, but there's something unsatisfying about it's like the end of the Clue movie, which I know people love, and I'm not saying that I don't like the Clue movie necessarily, but seeing all the different endings, you're just like, okay.
Yeah.
So nothing
It just
matters.
keeps going. Yeah. I think I also saw it for the definitive. And I think something about Choose Your Own Adventure that was a little frustrating is like, I have to be the character.
Yeah.
And so then the author isn't doing, there's not a lot of character then to sink into, which I hadn't really thought about until now.
I mean, it's definitely like just the title Choose Your Own Adventure is so empowering, and is so like as a kid you're just like, fuck, like, oh my god, I get to do this, like this is amazing. So on some level I totally get that, but then to like read a couple weeks ago that they're trying to do a movie out of it, and I'm like, I truly do not even know what that even means.
No.
Like I don't know how you possibly adapt it, but maybe someone has a brilliant idea of it.
I can see that like in a digital space, maybe, but not
Yeah,
in
like
the.
no, for sure. Or
Yeah.
in the TV space where they're just sort of like you get to have all these branches of different. But as a movie, I'm just like that
No.
sounds like a nightmare to me. But
Yeah.
yeah,
But not a theater. Well, whatever. Um,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
neither here nor there.
You know.
I'm looking at my notes. Is there
Hmm.
anything that you know you wanted to talk about that we did not cover?
I don't think so. I mean, I like that his markings are like a cape.
Hmm.
I was surprised by how visual I found it.
Yeah.
It did conjure a lot of really great imagery.
When Dad brings home the bunny for the first time is
Hmm.
great. Dark
Hmm.
and stormy night,
Totally.
lightning
Yeah. All that.
crashes.
Yeah.
He's got it. That is a really great moment of scene setting. That's a very
I'll
striking
say
visual.
this. I do think I did bump a little bit
Yeah.
on them finding him in a movie theater of Dracula. Now, I say that I, I say that because it does beg questions, if you know what I mean. Like
Hmm.
and we shouldn't think too hard on these things, and they're definitely just sort of like whatever. Don't think about it too much. But I did sort of find myself being like, so who?
You need a prequel.
You
Yeah.
you do kind of need a prequel a little bit, or
Hmm.
even just like some sort of explanation for why there's a vampire rabbit in a box at a movie theater of Dracula. Like, do you know what I'm sort of what I'm getting at? Like,
Yeah.
it's almost like they're just like, are you on the ride? You
Yeah.
don't worry about it, which is fine. But I did kind of think like there is a more graceful way to get here.
Yeah.
It's almost like they liked the idea so much of underlining the vampire thing at the Dracula
Mm.
movie that they felt like because like there's another version of this where they just find him in the backyard or they you know what I
Yeah.
mean where it's just like they find him in the woods or whatever and it is what it is, right? They're almost showing their hand too
Hmm.
quickly in a way by doing
Yeah.
what they do up top, but yeah, I mean, I guess that's if I had a note that would be a note, but whatever. I mean,
Well, now that we've done that, would you
mm.
consider it required reading?
I actually would
Yeah.
for kids. I
Yeah.
think that I mean not for adults. I don't know that an adult needs to read it, but I do think that like speaking for myself anyway, it was very activating for genre, right? Like
Yeah.
if I think that kids often reading can feel like homework,
Hmm.
quite literally is homework sometimes, and anything that you can do to sort of and I'm sure parents do this all the time, right? It's why parents read their kids the Lord of the Rings books or I mean, I guess Harry Potter. You know, there's
Yeah.
you know, there's lots of books. I remember my stepmother reading me the Faraway Tree, I think was the name of
Oh.
it. But trying to read kids fun, exciting,
Yeah.
adventure-y things so that reading is fun and is filled with imagination and all that sort of stuff. So I totally get that. And I think this is one of those books that you could absolutely that a kid, I mean, obviously I was one of them where you read it and go like, okay, this is fun and this is exciting. So yeah, I would say it I certainly would read it to my kids.
Yeah. I love how you phrase it of activating. I think that is exactly it. I love books that do that. Yeah, what I think great to be in a fourth grade classroom. Absolutely. That's I think
Totally.
how I
Yeah.
found it. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll say this, you know, when you reached out to me and I looked at the list, I mean the book that I probably would point
Hmm.
to as the book that Jurassic Park was the first
Yeah.
like grown up book that I ever read, I think. Pretty sure it was.
Hmm.
And that to me was sort of like and it's pseudoscience
Yeah.
of it all and I'm relatively sure I read it because I knew they were making a movie out of it but maybe I'm
Mm.
wrong. All this is to say I was around 12, 13 when that book came out and I think that similarly in terms of concept of
Mm.
something high concept that was like oh you can do this in books and just you know violence and gore and like you know it was obviously I mean that book is meant for grown-ups like it's you know, length and all that sort of stuff but this definitely was going even farther back had a somewhat similar effect so yeah I would say
Yeah.
absolutely people should read it.
Well, is there anything that you would like to plug where people can find you?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, so myself and Emily St. James have a podcast called Podcast Like It's the 2000s, where we do mini series of films from the 2000s. So right now we're in the middle of a Angelina Jolie 2000s mini series where we're talking about her action films of the 2000s.
Yes,
Um,
Tomb Raider, right?
Tomb
That's what
Raider
you've been
just came out
posting.
this week.
Yeah, yeah.
Tomb Raider 1 and 2, and then next week, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, and then we're wrapping it up with Wanted. The next miniseries we're doing is Richard Kelly Reichardt, which is
Okay.
a mix of Richard Kelly and Kelly Reichardt's films of the 2000s. And we're having Fiona Dourif is coming on to talk about Donnie Darko with us to start that miniseries, which is exciting. So yeah, we're doing that, and then on the Patreon, I do a Patreon podcast like it's the 1990s, where I do mini series based on 90s films, and I'm currently in the middle of a mini series with Tom Eisen and Katie McGrath, where we talk about action flops from the 90s. So we that mini series has been a little trying at times, but Last Action Hero, Cutthroat Island,
Wow.
Daylight, Judge Dredd, Event Horizon,
Yeah.
and Strange Days, and then we're wrapping it up with Starship Troopers. So
Wow.
it's quite the journey. But yeah, people can check that out. Podcast Like It's on Instagram and TikTok and all that stuff. I'm also on Instagram. People can follow me at PM Iscove as well.
Wonderful. Well, I end the podcast by reading the last paragraph sentence of the
Do
book.
it. Love it.
I must now bring this narrative to a close, since it is Friday night, Toby's night to stay up late and read, and I can hear the crinkling of cellophane. I can only hope it covers 2 chocolate cupcakes with cream filling. The end.
Harold getting his cupcakes one last time. It'll
One
probably
last
kill
time.
Harold, but I mean,
That's the real supernatural element, is Harold has been a ghost this whole
this whole
time.
time. Or that Harold somehow has beat the odds and is, a superhuman dog that can eat the one thing that dogs are not supposed to eat. So,
Yes.
whatever. There you go. Yeah.
And that's Holiday Inn.
That's Holiday Inn. Indeed. Exactly.
Well, I will end the recording there. Stop it.